every week, hiding underneath.
It can be very hard to tell exactly the timing for things switching. I'm not very good at that kind of thing.
Yeah. We're still
Joel
trying
has
out a few
himself
new
muted
things.
in
Yeah.
Zoom for me, so
Okay.
I can't hear a word he's saying.
Yes, that is true. Although, yeah, you'd have to. Actually, let me see if I can figure this out then. Sorry, I can always. You might hear me double then, but that's just too bad for you, I guess. But as long as you can hear me a little bit and we can still talk, that'll be fine. Thanks everyone for being here. Hello, welcome to Your Brand, Your Business. Please, again, there is a lot more production value now here in our show compared to when we first started. So there's that. Thank you to Loco and StreamerSquare for generously providing all of that. Pretzel Rocks for providing, friendly streaming music. Please do let us know if we have any issues, like you can't hear us, you can't hear Galen, you hear too much of us, or someone's too loud. We are still trying to figure this out. We are professionals, just not professional streamers. So there's that. But now it's time for
we're not professional streamers.
Now it's time for our obligatory last week on Your Brand, Your Business. Go ahead and take it away, Galen. Or actually, this should be last 2 weeks ago on Your Brand, Your Business. I forget that he has the delay now. So
there's one thing I'm going to need you to do first, which is right now I can only hear you through the stream because you don't have yourself unmuted in Zoom.
All right, so yeah, okay. Let's figure that out then. You might, if you end up hearing two of us in chat, please do let us know. But we will get that taken care of. Whoops.
Professional
streamers. Yeah. So like I said, we took a week off last week, and I do apologize for that. We had to take a week off because I had gotten sick from my daughter, and then and it was Super Bowl Sunday week, so there's just a lot of things going on. Rather than postponing the show or pushing back the show later into the day, we just decided to kind of make it to the next week. But we are now hopefully back on track for our own kickoff this week, which is the kickoff of the Business Hygiene theme. And that includes, first, a recap of what we talked about the last time on Your Brand and Your Business, which was 2 weeks ago. And for that's Galen's gig.
Oh, gosh. Now I need to remember 2 weeks ago, and then I need to actually, do the...
That's why we have notes.
Previously on Your Brand, Your Business.
There you go.
See, it's right with Dragon Ball FighterZ, right?
That is.
I need that as the announcer, your past match just at the start of it for your own enjoyment. Last week, or 2 weeks ago, we talked about our business philosophies. Since both Joel and I are business owners, in addition to working with a lot of business owners, we talked about what beliefs and principles, aka philosophies, guided us in our business and how we thought that could be helpful just in general, and then also helpful to make sure that you as a business owner are actually conscientious and sit and think about what your philosophies are, so that when you're making decisions, your life is a lot easier because you already have your guide rails.
Exactly. So the point of the business philosophy, as Galen mentioned, was just kind of it's your roadmap, right? So that's kind of, it allows you to know what you're working towards. And now today, and as people in chat asked, business hygiene, what do we mean by business hygiene? We will explain that, and that kind of we'll also tie that back into the business philosophies to show you how they kind of work together, right? So again, macro picture, macro being the large scale, the macro picture of all of this is that the business philosophy helps you figure out what it is you want to do, why you want to do it, and then the business hygiene portion of it, which is this is the kickoff of the business hygiene theme. So this will span over a few episodes. I think we're thinking probably at least 3 or 4. This is going to be kind of more so how you go about doing what you want to do, and best practices to do it. So to answer your question, this hygiene being I actually looked this up, the definition. So hygiene is the conditions or are the conditions or practices conducive to maintaining health and preventing disease, especially through cleanliness, right? So that's what personal hygiene is. And people mentioned before, like, yeah, does that mean we're going to tell people to take showers and wear deodorant during conventions or something like that? Yes, please go ahead and do that. Yeah,
Please do.
please do. That's good personal hygiene, but then at the same time, to practice good business hygiene, it's also what are the best practices that are conducive to maintaining your business health and preventing, weaknesses and damage to your business. So these are the best practices for that. I have to give full credit to Galen for coming, or at least introducing to me the term business hygiene. So let's let Galen kind of do his little intro of what business hygiene is, and then so he can, and I'll be in chat to kind of answer any questions, or at least point out, remember any questions, so I can direct them to Galen later, and then we will, for the rest of the show, or at least this intro to business hygiene episode, we will be discussing a few examples, kind of showcasing what some of the future topics will be. Well, we'll give a very kind of brief overview today, and then in the future topics, then we'll get into more details and more concrete steps that you can take to practice some of those good habits.
Yep.
Yeah, so without further ado, Galen will go ahead and kind of explain more about business hygiene, while I'll help and be the chat moderator, if you will, to take any questions you guys might have.
All right. So like Joel said, a really big piece of it is just directly analogous to personal hygiene, where the piece of it that I think is the most important from the definition that Joel gave is the practices conducive to maintaining health. For me, business hygiene is doing all of those things that aren't necessarily fun to do, that don't necessarily make you money right on the, in the spot, that don't necessarily directly satisfy your mission per se. Because when we were talking about business philosophies, both Joel and I talked about how a big part of our philosophy was being mission driven and helping people, helping individuals, and doing things that we found engaging. Because he's an attorney, I'm a financial planner, we could both work for someone else and make a lot more money than we're making right now, but it was important to us enough philosophically that we chose to do what we do now. So these hygiene tasks are the things that kind of support that, sort of like, and everyone out there has their own thing, but I don't consider brushing my teeth particularly fun. Like, it's a thing that I do, and it's a thing that helps keep me healthy, and it's a thing that in the long run saves me a lot of money and pain and stress. But day to day, it's not that fun. Like, I don't know, maybe it is for you guys. But business hygiene really is really building those good habits that help everything else run smoothly. It's, to use analogy, or to use idiom, that's having your ducks in a row. It's having all the boxes checked, I's dotted, T's crossed, that kind of thing. So it's first establishing those habits, those good habits, which we'll talk about some examples, as Joel said. And then it's also building routines to maintain those habits, because just like brushing your teeth, if you brush your teeth for a month and then stop, it'll be better than if you didn't brush your teeth, but it's still not achieving what brushing your teeth is supposed to, at least not once you've stopped. And just like any habit, the more that you do it, the more regularly that you do it, the better it is for you. And you want to take into consideration, when you're looking at these kinds of things, what is the thing that you need to be doing? How often does it need to be done? And even perhaps more importantly than how often does it need to be done is, how often does it need to be done so that you actually keep doing it? And when I say that, I'm thinking about it from like the behavioral perspective. Behavioral finance is one of my favorite topics, which is just basically how do you use how we're wired to help you do things the right way or avoid bad outcomes. And one example of just sort of habit behavior is if you need to take pills. So you need to take a pill. The example that I'm reading, or near the end of the book, Nudge by Thaler, which by the way is amazing, but is talking about birth control pills, where you have, it's supposed to be, I don't remember the exact numbers on it now because I don't take them, but it's something along the lines of you need to take 4 weeks on, 1 week off. But one of the things that they did 1 week off, one of the things that they did to match how humans actually act is you get, I think it's 3 weeks off, 3 weeks on, 1 week off. Anyways, you get a box of 28 pills, even though you only need 21, and 7 of them are those placebos. But the idea is just having you take a pill on schedule each day, even when you don't have to, keeps you in the habit so that you don't accidentally mess it up. Those are the kinds of things that you want to build in with your business hygiene too. One of the big things we want to talk about is, why does this matter? And Joel, kick in whenever you want to, but why does this matter is, at least for me, the question that I always want to ask when someone wants to tell me to do something that I don't want to do. Why do I have to brush my teeth? Why do I have to do the dishes? Why do I have to, brush the cat fur off of me? Because we've got so many cats and there's cat fur on everything. And the answer is that for most of the things we'll talk about, at least, it's short-term or small dose pain for the trade-off of, in the long term, making your life so much easier. One of the big examples that I think we're going to be talking through is accounting. So it's not fun to have to log whenever you're earning income for your business or spending money in your business. But if you do it on a routine, once a week, once a month, whatever, it's way better than having to try and do it come tax time, which, guess what? We're in the depths of tax time right now. And beyond that, on the easier side, the other piece of it too is it really helps, at least in my opinion, reduce the chance for a critical failure. Again, sort of like the teeth brushing example. Brushing your teeth routinely means that you are less likely to have to get a tooth pulled or to have an abscess that gets all nasty or whatever it is, right? It's those small actions that over time prevent a critical failure.
Yep.
And since you, as the streamer, are the biggest asset of your business, in fact, pretty much the only asset of your business, one of the biggest things that it is imperative for you to do is take the steps that you need to prevent a critical failure of you. That could be overwhelm, that could be exhaustion, that could be just getting jaded, that could be just being unhealthy enough that you can't continue doing whatever it is that you need to do for your stream. That could be not doing the outside of broadcasting stuff that keeps the stream running and keeps you earning income. All those kinds of things.
Yep, exactly. And I think there were a few good questions that were asked in chat while you were describing what business hygiene, what does it mean, and why does it matter? And I think let's kind of retrace a lot of those questions while giving my piece. And I think the analogy for personal hygiene works very well. And to kind of hammer around the point that this is a habit, right? These are all practices or habits. And while I was doing research for this theme and today's episode and also the following episodes, I came across an interesting fact where it said for habits to actually take hold, it takes anywhere between 18 days and 254 days of consistently doing them for your brain to actually have it like set in as a habit. And this goes right with that birth control pill, which I'm surprised how much you knew about birth control. But
I'm married.
That's true. Obviously we didn't practice it because we got a little girl. So, but anyway, that's a big tangent, right? But now, so back to the habit part. Yes, doing something consistently, and I always, if you take that between the range is the minimum of 18 days and the maximum of 254 days, I think it's safe to say that you should be doing it at least 21 days or for a month before that you can actually consider it a good positive habit, right? And then if you've watched the show before, you'll hear that I harp a lot on the power of incremental change, right? And this was something that I learned from during my studies in tax law and whatever, because it's something that accountants and like tax-minded people like to talk about. Like it's easy to dream about the big things, and dreaming is a big portion of good business hygiene, right? And being forward-looking, having your goals set and stuff like that, being able to spot opportunities. But at the same time, one of the challenges of being a business owner is that you have to do pretty much every single role. So you have to be the dreamer, but at the same time, you have to do the execution. And the execution portion is important with the habits.
Until you get to the point where you outsource it, which
exactly,
is just amazing.
Yes. So, and that is another portion that we will be talking about within business hygiene. But then in the very beginning, you are responsible for all of these different portions. And it's very easy for most people who are kind of self-starters or entrepreneurial or freelance work, kind of like, or content creators, which this, for talking to you, chances are you're a content creator. The dreaming aspect, the big picture aspect is comes almost second nature. What doesn't come second nature is the habitual aspect, which is why, and I mean,
the getting shit done part.
Yes, exactly, right? So, and for Galen and I as small business owners, that's exactly the same case also, right? That's what you actively have to practice, but in the end, that's what's going to make the most difference.
And it sucks to practice.
It sucks. Yeah, I'm in the same boat as Galen. I don't necessarily enjoy brushing my teeth, which I thought you were going to say you didn't think brushing your teeth was necessary, which
what?
I'm glad you...
No, it's definitely necessary.
Yeah, so I thought you said, like, because you started going, I think, like, unlike most people, I would think brushing my teeth is not fun, right? So I thought you were going to say not necessary, which is why I commented that in chat. But then... and this is something that I'm Asylum had brought up earlier. Are we talking about practices or how do you promote good health? Well, the answer is both, because these are practices in order to promote good health, right?
Exactly.
And Galen had, and this is one of our other mottos, the first motto being it depends, which doesn't really apply in this episode, but the second motto being you are the goods. And that fully applies in this episode, right? As the small business owner, as the content creator, you are the manufacturing plant, if you will, right? So you are the factory, you are the producer of the goods. Maybe that's a better phrase. You are the producer of the goods. Not necessarily. Well, you are selling yourself too.
You are the goods, but
we'll
find some better phrasing for that.
You are both the goods and the producer of the goods. So part of good business hygiene is also making sure you actively take care of yourself. So do you maintain the efficacy of your manufacturing plant, right? I.e. you. So that's why business hygiene matters. That's why these best practices matter. I think I like the phrase business hygiene because it helps solidify and the notion that these are things to do for the health of your business. And it's not just, I mean, we could just use the phrase best practices. You'll find that out there anyway. Best practices, good habits, anything like that. If you want to find out more information, you can use those terms and search them in Google also for best practices of small business owners. But then business hygiene helps you to remember that these are practices you have to do on a daily basis just to make sure that you are taking care of your business. So that's what it means. That's why it matters. It is like Galen said, it's for making your life easier and reducing the chance of a critical failure, of something happening that burnout or something like that can really significantly harm your business in this sense. Because, I mean, the name of the show is your brand, your business, right? So of course it makes sense that we're going to say you're the goods, or you're the producer of the goods. And these are the best steps for kind of taking care of those goods and the producer of the goods.
I'm sorry, I'm chuckling at, first of all, the name Timid War Crime, but second, the thing there. Well, and earlier,
he actually had a good question earlier too. So
yeah, that's what I was going to go to. Is there a notable difference between designing your mindset to maintain good business hygiene and improving your mental control in general? I'd say no.
I would actually argue. Okay.
Go for it.
No, I would say my answer is, being the lawyer, I'm always going to say it depends again, right? So, but in this case, let me qualify. I should say, being the lawyer, I'm always going to be qualifying my answers. And this is what my qualification for that answer is. A lot of the practices that are good business hygiene just make good sense for you in your personal life. Having said that, there are a lot of practices that are unique to business owners that may not necessarily apply to you as an employee or as whatever else you do. Or at least they might not be totally foreign to you as a personal on the personal side, but they matter a lot more as a business owner. Let me give you an example of that. Being able to delegate, or building relationships and being able to outsource, that is not necessarily something that is critical in a day-to-day personal side, right? So I mean, like, if you can take care of your own self and do the necessary things, and you are perfectly fine doing that, then go ahead and do it, right? I know plenty of people who cut their own hair, or I know plenty of people who do their own, cooking or whatever, right? So you don't have to delegate your cooking or
You
outsource
don't
any of that.
have to, but I mean, a lot of us do on the things that we don't enjoy doing, or where it's just not as cost effective for us to do it because our time is better spent elsewhere.
Yes, but that's your thinking as a business owner.
Yeah.
That works from the personal side, but then that's the value of that is so much more heightened as a business owner, which is why I said there is a difference. A lot of the advice we're giving you, if you're not a content creator, I guess that's what it boils down to. If you're not a content creator, should you be watching this show? One, yes, because I hope that you find us entertaining, but more importantly, yes, because I feel that this advice would also be, at least if not applicable directly to you, but at least gives you food for thought on what you can do in your personal life, right? And then
You're one of those people who starts lists and then doesn't list anything else.
What do you mean? Oh, I said I had 2 points. I just didn't say the second point. I said one yes, and then the other one B.
One yes, B.
Yeah.
And off topic, sorry, but
yeah. That's why I outsource my listing and my drafting to Microsoft Word, because I don't have to worry about making sure everything is correctly ordered. Right. Okay. Let's see if there are what other questions that we had in chat. Is there a certain point or sign when you should adjust your hygiene because it's not working, i.e., bad toothpaste? Yes, definitely. And actually, that is a very good point, Fluffy Pancake, because it brings up what is another good business practice, hygiene, and we're just kind of spotlighting some of these now. Although Galen might make fun of my list making habits, the fact is I do have a list. It may not be in order. It might be one and then B and then hyphen or something, right? But then there is a list there. So, and that is one of the points on the lists. Reflection, right? Being able to go back and analyze your business practices and seeing if you need to change your toothpaste, or in this case, change whatever practices you might be doing, right?
Yep. And honestly, just like a lot of things with personal hygiene too, it could be, a lot of the triggers could be things like pain. Like, oh God, my tooth's killing me, right? Like, have I been doing the things that I need to do to take care of it? Or someone from the outside being like, you smell awful. Like, there are those kinds of things that are sort of the normal triggers, I'd say, just in general, that can also, if you're seeking out feedback, if you're talking to your peers, all those kinds of things can come in addition to just your own self-reflection.
Yeah, and I think this is kind of funny because Resorty had pointed out, is one item on the list of practices to evaluate the list of practices. Yes. Right? It sounds stupid, but that is exactly it. And then there's other good questions that were brought up in chat list. It's pretty much, there are bad habits also. We will get back to kind of some, and I think that's a great question. I'm going to assign, we will get back to some of what we think. At least let's make that kind of one of the points later towards the end. We'll share what we think are bad habits. So keep that in mind. And if you guys want to share in chat, please do. Feel free to share with us what you think a bad habit would be for a business. But it was also that, would you say that a healthy business mindset can lead to unhealthy life habits? And I think that is definitely the case too. For example, one of the good business practices is that you, besides the analysis, you have to be kind of constantly analyzing and kind of critiquing yourself and being involved in your business, right? There is a portion of being delegated, but then you have to understand what's going on with your business. So you have to be able to be self-critical. Mm-hmm. Well, it's a little bit, not quite oxymoronic, but they are a little bit of opposites, where you have to be able to be self-critical, but at the same time, you have to be self-confident, right? So can you get to the point where you are overly self-critical that you start damaging your self-confidence? That is, yes, and that's not only bad for your business, but it's also bad for your own personal well-being. So there are definitely some struggles where your business mindset can end up being detrimental to your personal mindset, which is why one of the major business hygiene practice that we're going to talk about is also self-care, finding that balance, and knowing when to step outside. And that again
goes back to you being the goods. If
yes.
What you want to do is protect the most important asset of the business, then you got to keep yourself in mind.
Mm-hmm. Yes, the balance is very hard to find. That is one that
It
we will
is.
probably dedicate at least a whole episode to, that portion, finding balance, the reasons for finding balance, how you can do it. And I think that's the one that we will try to bring on at least one or a couple other
Oh, we
content
gotta,
creators.
Loco, you gotta be on that one.
Yeah,
Cause
yeah,
she does like 15 million things and actually does a different style of balance than I do that seems to work for her. So it's cool to show
yeah,
that there's not just one way to balance things.
yeah. I think that would be an amazing episode to have Loco on, just to kind of share her perspective and experiences as far as finding balance
Got her.
goes. Yep. And I think then the author was busy doing something else.
That sounds right.
Yeah. And I think that's the so we will be spending at least an episode on that portion of it. Why don't we go ahead and talk about some other examples that you might have and kind of do some spotlighting. I have a list. You'll see my list there, Galen, on this document that we're working off of. But then we can work off some of these examples that you have listed also, while still taking feedback from chat and seeing what you guys have come up with some really great questions so far, and thank you for that. Please do contribute them. This might be a good time to do a little bit of housekeeping. One being, did we ever figure out the commands? Let's see, the Discord. Let's there you go.
Boom.
Yeah. So again, I guess we should have done this in the beginning, right? But if you can't tell already about what the premise or gist of this show is, Your Brand, Your Business is a show where I, as an attorney, and Galen, as a financial planner, kind of bring our perspectives as professionals regarding business ownership of content creators. Because you guys have spent an inordinate amount of time and energy building your brand. Our goal is to help you do that in a more effective manner, so you are capitalizing on all of the time and energy that you put in, giving you advice and practices like this, and also just kind of talking about current issues. There was one where we talked about the tax law, which you can kind of go back and find out. I think we have a VOD on that available too. Yeah. So just kind of talking about the different issues that are coming about that will affect you guys, not just as business owners, but specifically as content creators in this kind of freelance gig economy on this on Twitch or on just the internet economy in general. So,
and you had better listen, because I was playing Civ 6 up until 10 minutes before the show started, and then I had to stop to come talk to you guys. So pay attention.
And I know how difficult it is to step away from a Civ
on my
game.
Part.
Yes. So that's the premise of the show, and we are fortunate enough to be able to present this here on StreamerSquare, which is a great resource for other content creators, specifically streamers here on Twitch, but where like-minded individuals get together to kind of share these advice. You'll find a lot of other content creators, and this is all headed up by the wonderful Loco, who is in chat. And then we have a Discord where Galen and I also participate, and we have our very own Your Brand, Your Business channel. What is that? That's the command I was looking for. I believe you got that one, Galen. So please do feel free to the feedback you have, whether you want to leave it here in chat now, or whether you want to send to us directly via social media, which I think is, I believe it's this, and
I didn't put myself in. You're there though.
I'm there. Okay.
I just didn't make myself.
Okay. Well, there you. Well, so Galen's is Galen will show what his social media is, and you can always give us feedback directly there. It'd be great if you can kind of chat with us in the Discord, because there you won't just hear from us.
It was up in the original one, Twitter at least.
Oh, that's true. Yes. You can chat with not just us, but also with other streamers to kind of get feedback, which I think this is one of the biggest benefits of being in a community like this, is that you can learn from other individuals, and kind of that collective collaboration, if you will.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And I guess we kind of messed up in that we didn't do this part. So we are professionals, as I mentioned earlier, but this is a show that's provided for general educational purposes. So we are giving general advice, but it's not specific legal advice or specific financial advice, to the point where we're not actually in a professional relationship where you've engaged either one of us. We are happy to sit down with you, and we both do initial consultations that are complimentary to kind of hear you out, whether you have any legal or business concerns. So we're happy to consult with you guys, and then if you decide to move forward, and if there is an issue that warrants moving forward, that you can always hire us. But specifically for this show, this is general advice. There is no legal or tax or accounting or professional advice being kind of shared. And one of the main reasons for that is because we can only give advice on a broad basis. We can't give advice on a specific case-by-case basis. One, you don't want to be sharing that information out on the open internet where it's available forever. And two, you might be violating certain things like attorney-client privilege, or you might be sharing confidential information that is otherwise, potentially damaging to either you or to ourselves. And really, three, it makes more sense to do that kind of analysis or advice on a more personal one-on-one basis. Okay. Any questions so far? And thank you again for being here. And I mean, I'm really enjoying this logo and our new overlay. So thank you, Loco, for that. And just for the increased production value. Part of the reason we are doing the increased production value is to make this more readily available and easily consumed on demand, whether you're going to be watching this on a video on demand, or if we ever decide to, if we are ever to the point where we're putting this up kind of as a podcast for audio only, or if you're just watching a clip of it or anything else. We do appreciate your viewership or your listenership, and we just would like you to be able to enjoy it a little bit better, right? So I know Galen and I aren't necessarily the prettiest faces out there.
You're going off topic. Joel, you're going off topic.
Yeah, but while what we may not make, while what we may be missing in entertainment value, I hope we are able to bring in educational value. And I'll leave it at that before we go on another crazy tangent.
The thing that we were getting to before...
Yes.
Before we realized that we were violating our own talk on hygiene and had to do our disclaimer and talk about who we were and things like that, with some other examples of business hygiene kind of things. We had a couple that were, I'd say, more specific, and then a couple that were more general. Some of the specific ones, right back on track, by the way. Some of the more specific ones were some of the things that we've talked about before when we were talking about like the checklist for different stages of your streaming business, where it's one-time tasks that you need to do just to make sure that they're done. And these are a lot of the things that I write about, but it's, making sure you get an employer identification number, making sure that you're signing up for, that you're, incorporating your business if it's relevant, or doing business ads or something like that. And then some of them are more ongoing, like the ones that we mentioned, for instance, buying and using accounting software, or remembering each year to do a 1099 for someone who's done over $600 worth of work for you, or even just tracking your time. What are you doing? If you're a streamer, especially if you're a full-time streamer, you're probably spending a lot of time streaming, but you want to make sure that you're also doing the other activities that you need to do for your business and that you're actually tracking it. So for me, because I am the only person in my business, and I have to do all the jobs, which is like Joel was talking about earlier, I have to make sure that I'm spending enough time each week doing marketing and direct outreach, and doing the actual client work that I need to do, and doing the different like writing stuff that I want to do. And by tracking it, it does two things for me. One, if I'm not doing it enough, it helps me see that and deal with it. And two is, if I have done it enough, it helps me move on, I guess I'll say. When you're a small business owner, one of the things is that if you haven't built up these good practices that build habits that you're comfortable with and that you review over time, is that it can feel like there's always more to do, or you're never doing enough. And that just isn't good from a mental health and usually physical health perspective. So if you build up a good tracking system for yourself, I've got a big ass spreadsheet that I use, but if you build up a good tracking system for yourself, you can help also disengage, I guess I'd say, as appropriate. And that's what we were talking about earlier with the making sure you're taking time for the things that also keep your upkeep in place. And that goes into that balance discussion. So not surprisingly, these all tie together, right? Even though it's not, even though well, for some people it's fun to be organized, even though it's not always fun to be organized, being organized helps you have more fun otherwise, is my opinion. And helps you avoid those critical failures, those nasty surprises that really hurt. And so if you're doing these, if you're building up a structure around building these good habits, you're making your life way easier in multiple different ways. Joel, you had a couple others that you wanted to talk about, and we'll get more into the organization stuff. I think, is that next week's topic, the week after, something like that? Like,
Yeah.
where we can go into more details on the things that we're doing?
Yes. So, like, as I mentioned earlier, we're just kind of highlighting some of the habits that we found out there that are best practices. This is both things we've learned from personal experience, right, being our own business owners, or that we've learned from other professionals. Because let's face it, one of the good best practices is to learn from others, right? It's kind of there will be an episode that kind of deals with relationships overall, right? And we're not talking about romantic relationships, even though Valentine's Day is coming up or something like that. But we're talking about how you can use your relationships to help you in your own business, whether that's building relationships, networking, delegating, outsourcing, that kind of stuff. That will be a topic in its own. My point is that using others and learning from others is a good way to save yourself some time. You don't have to go about reinventing the wheel, and learning from others who are from a very different school of thought, if you will, right? And so there was a question regarding, business philosophy, or why do we call it business philosophy? Well, business philosophy also, whether you want to call it a mission statement, whether you want to call it your core values, whatever it is, it's just philosophy being something, a thought that guides you, right? Or the study of thought. Someone might have to look up it's been a while since I took philosophy 101 in college. So in any event, the idea is that you learn from others, schools of thought, you learn from others' practices and their beliefs, right? And then so not just you're learning from others and not just the kind of their values, but also what they actually do. And that's a good way for example, that's one of the core visions behind StreamerSquare. You're learning from other streamers who are doing same things as you, some more successfully and some not as successfully, or you can learn from others' failures too. I think that's one of the...
Let our fuck-ups and random lucky successes guide you.
Yeah. Essentially, yes. So it's pretty much just... basically, I think that's probably one of the best indications of someone who is doing things right. Not that you learn from your own mistakes, which you definitely should be doing. Don't let that keep you from making your own mistakes, but also learning from others' mistakes, right? So I think that's a mark of someone who is definitely a very wise person. So that is why we will have an episode on relationships, but the next one is going to be an episode on organization, and these are habits that we've learned from ourselves. I'll just go out and say it right now. I am not an organized person. I am severely lacking in that area. So what I do is I try to learn from others who are doing it, or who do it successfully. That's going to be next week's topic, and hopefully we can find some. We will bring in other commentators, whether that's from people that we've interviewed and talked to, or if we have another guest, then that would be great to talk about organization from a business perspective. We're back to spotlighting the different episodes that we will be discussing in this theme of business hygiene. So we have balance, which we've kind of voluntold loco for. We have organization. We have relationships, right? And we also have kind of this ties back a little bit into our going full-time checklist and going full-time panel, which was the financial considerations, legal considerations, and personal considerations. You'll see a lot of tie-in. For more information about that panel and stuff like that, do we have it? I think it's a command, right?
Well, you're looking for that.
It would help if I spelled it correctly.
Yes, it would.
There you go.
There you go.
Yeah. So
okay, that worked.
Okay. This is kind of the panel that spawned this show, or was the inspiration for this show, and that was kind of dealing with yourself as a business owner, especially when it's your full time. So that's what this hygiene episode is. You'll find out that a lot of these things are we're not repeating exactly everything that we talked about in that panel, but we're kind of going into a further level of detail, and we're kind of doing it from in this perspective where how do you make those habits rather than just being a checklist. So again, sorry, just to summarize again, we'll be talking about organization next week. A future episode will also include balance, self-care. This is the taking care of you as the producer of goods and the goods. And then relationships, right? How do relationships help you to be a better business owner? And this is important because a lot of people kind of have that mentality where what's the image, right? You get the image of the lone person working very late at night at the office, burning the midnight oil as the business owner, sacrificing everything. And while that, you will undoubtedly see that happen sometimes, right? So we talked about this the previous episode. We as Galen and I weren't built to be working 40 hours a week for somebody else because that's not part of our core value, right? We like being at the helm of our own businesses, but what does that mean? That means we're working 80 hours a week for ourselves instead, right? So yes. While that is very much the case, and that will definitely be happening, that is not the end goal, not by a long shot. The end goal is that you are building up a business, and part of that is building up relationships to help you to be able to pass on that business, to evolve your business where you are able to take more time away from the business, right? I think a key attribute of a successful business is how much time you're able to spend away from the business without it falling apart. So, and then finally, we're also going to be discussing kind of executing some of these steps, or how do you execute your business plan as part of, just being a good business owner. How do you keep things running, or at least making sure that they're on progress, on pace? And involved in that is also the analysis of bad business habits, right? How do you cut the fat? How do you build efficiency in your business through the execution, and what's involved in, being self-critical and analyzing to see where you need to make certain changes. Yeah. Galen, do you have anything else to add or to point out kind of what are some episodes that you're kind of particularly interested in talking about?
I'm looking, the one I really, the two that I find the most interesting and that I think are really tied together, even if they don't seem like it as much, are the dreaming big and planning one of like basically just looking forward, being conscientious there, and the able to execute. And the real reason that I like that is because, so a big part of what I do is work with clients to help them figure out where they want to go. Because the sort of two most important first steps in the planning process in general are figure out where you stand today, figure out where you want to go in the future. And then, the planning is finding the path between those two. But one of the really, and we'll talk about this more in the episode, but one of the really interesting things that ties ability to execute to that future planning piece is, for most of us, if we can paint a really cool picture of what we want to do in the future and keep that front and center in our minds, we are way better at getting things done, right? If you can tie the action that you're doing today, which might be some boring hygiene thing, right? Because again, we're saying, these aren't necessarily the business hygiene in general isn't the most fun topic. However, if you can tie it to something that's meaningful and line up how this boring step leads to cool things, you're way more likely to get things done and get them done more effectively. So I'm excited for those and for tying them together. Because like we've said, this kind of stuff can be boring and it can be difficult. And that makes for things that aren't necessarily easy to do.
Yes. And then we mentioned this earlier. It's just this, for a lot of people, the self-ownership or the entrepreneurial aspect is exciting, right? Because there's a lot of, you're building something for yourself. You're doing something for yourself. And especially in in what is a rapidly developing field, that excitement is just even greater, right? So like you're doing something for yourself on a cutting edge market, if you will, or cutting edge industry, rapidly developing industry. And we talked about this during our business philosophies that, for me anyway, one of the exciting things is that because this is an industry that is still rapidly developing, whatever you do now can almost set the pace for others later. And to me, it's like being part of the wild, wild west, right? So you just kind of go out there, you make a name for yourself, you develop, you build something that is kind of even more meaningful because it's in an industry that's rapidly evolving. Well, that's all exciting and well and good and everything. The flip side of that is to actually be successful in building something, you have to deal with all this boring, tiny detail minutia of business hygiene, right? Galen's point is just spot on. You have to remember why you're doing it to kind of motivate you to do it. So it's just reminding yourself, why does being organized help me to create a successful business, right? So paperwork is one of the things that I absolutely hate the most, right? I hate going through my email inbox to try to respond to messages. I hate filing. I hate doing all of that. But the reason I do that is I have to remind myself, you do that to stay organized so that you are better able to carry out your business, right? Yep. So with all that clutter, then you're just going to end up you're going to be wandering around, right? So without that clutter, then you're better able to be a more effective business owner and be a more effective business as a whole, right? So I can better advise clients if I know where I can find their paperwork, if I know which specific documents I need to use to help them to get their stuff done. For me, an episode that I am looking forward to is the relationships episode because one, I think it's a very meaningful one in that it's something that not a lot of people think about, or rather that they think about it in a incorrect manner, if you will. Right, a lot of people view others as competition, right? They view others as kind of, you don't want to deal with others because you think that they're going to be stealing your viewership base. You think they'll be stealing your sponsorships, right? I actually spoke on a panel at PAX West this past year that was relating to, it was called competition or co-op, right? So working with other content creators to actually help you guys do more together. And so that's why for me, that episode is going to be extremely one that I look forward to, and I really hope that we can get some other people on there to kind of explain what some content creator organizations are out there, like whether it's a stream team, whether there's nonprofit organizations to help each other, or whether it's just a more loose association where you're helping, just working with close friends that are like-minded and both in business and in personality, and to how that can help you to do more. Because I think we're very much so in a space where it's not a zero-sum game. It's more so a rising tide will lift all boats scenario. There is, and you'll see that now. You'll see that there's so much kind of more interest, and with that more interest, more capital, more money flowing into this industry that it only helps that you are able to present yourself in a better light rather than, just trying to step on others to get to the top.
And with that being said, of there being more money coming into the space and things like that, the better prepared you are to take advantage of opportunities that come your way, which includes actually having your business in a place that it's a benefit your structure, not a barrier, the more likely you are to be able to take advantage of those opportunities, and the better you'll do. Like, seriously. And that's, and I don't, Joel's point is super important too. Like the personal relationships, the networking on the professional side, the networking is huge. That's where I end up getting most of my clients. But also on the human side of the reason that my business hasn't folded and I've taken a job somewhere else is because my wife will listen to me complain and be like, there, it's not that bad, Galen, and go on a walk with me and chat about what's bugging me. Like, it is really important for all of the pieces that we've talked about, for sure.
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. To Timit's question or point rather, we're not arguing that you should be that the better business is the end goal, right? So I think, especially since we're not arguing that you are doing this in order to become a business owner. The reality is, and Galen he says this repeatedly, but it's important that you listen when he says this repeatedly, is that many content creators are actually accidental business owners, right? Nobody went into this saying that I want to become a business owner, which is why I'm going to stream. No, they wanted to stream because they felt like it's an entertaining thing to do. They're passionate about video games or whatever that they're creating, and they want to do it in a manner that can, combine their passion. If they can make a living from it, then that's even better. the business part is almost secondary in that they didn't expect that to come, but it was an inevitable consequence. And yes, you're right in saying that these habits are really more so, and this is what we talked about earlier, that there isn't really a difference, although there are different maybe priorities, if you will, between changing your personal hygiene or your personal mindset and your business mindset or like mental space, right? This is, it's important that you still correct yourself, right? Because like we said, you are the goods. If you're not if you're not in tune with yourself on a personal basis, then you definitely won't be in tune with yourself on a business basis. So we're not arguing that you should be doing this to become a better business owner. A lot of these aspects are, you have to do this as a business owner, but in turn they will help you better yourself anyway in the long run, right? The best is still that you have to take care of the underlying person. Because even if you decide to end your channel or end your brand or whatever, or you, even if not necessarily that negative, but if you decide to transition into something else, a lot of these habits hopefully will go ahead and follow you and help you succeed in another avenue.
I completely agree.
Yeah.
We're coming up on an hour. Did we have more that we wanted to cover besides getting to the questions and talking a little bit about more the next week's episode?
I would say let's kind of say, we can kind of start talking a little bit about the organization if you want to do that. Otherwise, I'm okay with just taking questions. I like the way that I like the discussion that we've had in chat today. But now that we are coming up on an hour, why don't we take kind of a quick break, if that's okay? And then and that'll give time for our viewers to also, if you have any other questions, if you want to submit them here in chat or if you want to submit them here in the Discord, please go ahead and join the Discord. I think that is a great place to be. And that's a way to, we do this show every Sunday, or the goal is to do it every Sunday at 2 p.m. Central, noon Pacific, right? That's the goal, but that doesn't mean that the discussion only takes place during that time. You'll see that Galen and I are we're constantly on Twitter, right? So maybe almost to a detriment, but
probably
it's a good means of marketing, and it's a good means of getting and networking and finding out of other people. And while we're there, if you do, please go ahead and do follow us on Twitter, because you'll see that we post a lot of, for me right now, a lot of it's baby pictures. For Galen, a lot of it is his articles. So you'll probably get more out of following Galen than you will for following me. But I also have a mailing list that we will start using more to kind of highlight some of the resources that are available. But yes, let's go ahead and just do a kind of a quick 3-minute break or something like that. So get up, stretch your legs, part of your self-care, part of finding your balance, and we'll be right back. All right.
I think we can do, or are we still, can they still hear us? So you know that Ernest guy? Let's talk about the bad stuff that he has done and said and everything like that. well, you never muted things. They can hear us. I'm good.
I muted myself. I didn't mute you, so they could hear you. Yeah. I wanted them. If I muted you, then I guess I could have muted you through Zoom. Yep. Yes, it was Pretzel Music. We're not sponsored by them or anything, but if you want, especially if you're a content creator, kind of like, for me personally, a good business practice is don't get sued, right? So if you don't want to get sued, you can go ahead and make sure you find stuff like VOD-friendly music. That doesn't have to be through Pretzel, although that is one of the benefits of the service they provide.
Loco.
Yeah.
Loco.
Yeah.
Oh, pardon me. Sorry. Got an awful
Oh,
cough.
there you go. Yeah. So that is it's just VOD-friendly music. Great guys behind the company also. But you can also go on to other places like I think there's YouTube playlists that are specifically supposed to be like copyright-free music, although you might have to do your own due diligence because not necessarily all that music is actually what it's claimed to be. So you hear some horror stories out there. We can talk a little bit about the organization, or if you just kind of want to talk a little bit about let's see, like other business professionals, whether it's inside the space or outside of the space that you Galen personally look up to and admire in some of their own best practices that you've seen that they do. We can also take those things from chat too. Like just let us know. Thanks. I see that Ernest is here also. Ernest is a CPA that we do work with pretty regularly, and he also provides some great insight and great resources, educational resources. If you guys want to share business practices that you guys have seen from your, whether that's your day job, whether that's from reading, whether that's from whatever it is, do you have an example off the top of your head, or you need some time to think?
Probably my favorite, just in general, is the book The E-Myth, and now The E-Myth Revisited. E in E-Myth being, or standing for entrepreneur, and it's really just a book written for people who are starting up their own business on their own, and it's all about sort of both philosophical and business structural things that you can keep in mind and do, and just activities that you can do too that help you avoid failure. And the reason that avoid failure is so important is because it sounds stupid to say, but a lot of businesses that succeed did so because they avoided failing for long enough until they were viable, right? It's not like day one they were making $10 million and everything was great. It's like they made just enough to keep going, to keep solvent, and things built over time, and then they were successful. So, like, even though it sounds stupid to say, they just failed until they succeed, or didn't fail until they succeeded. It's actually
it's like
pretty accurate.
Like, yeah, almost like faking it until you make it, right?
Sort of, yeah. Actually, a lot.
Yeah, I'm glad you kind of qualified that failure, because I was going to say that one of the best practices that I've come across while preparing for these episodes on this theme is actually don't be afraid of failure. And I think that's very different than the type of failure that Galen is talking about here, if I'm correct in my assumption. And correct, go ahead and step in and interrupt if you feel like I'm mis-explaining your point. But don't be afraid of failure, in that don't be afraid to try things, and if they don't succeed, then you learn from that mistake, you learn from that specific failure. Where the failure that Galen is talking about is your business going belly up, right? So you don't necessarily, and this is maybe kind of more like grinding it out, right? You don't have to go for that, to use a sports analogy, you don't have to go for that grand slam. You just do go after single after single after single until you actually score those runs, right? Or if you are if you're a Destiny player, right? You don't have to go straight for all the legendary weapons, because you can't in the very beginning. You just kind of grind out all of the gear until you can, and you start grinding the gear, and then you have the parts, and then you can kind of trade in for the legendary gear. It's just all about being sustained.
That's inherently rating in anything, though, right? You don't expect to full clear everything on your first try.
Yeah. And I think there are two different things here. So there's the end all of failures, which is going belly up. That's the one that Galen is talking about. Just kind of striving, not necessarily like, don't be afraid that you're not an overnight success. Rather, I would almost caution you that you should be more worried if you are an overnight success, because that means you might just be riding whatever that wave is, and then if you can't capitalize that you're going to come crashing down fast.
And then you don't have the good habits built up over time to help you sustain it.
Look at that tie-in. Look at that.
Boom.
Yeah, that callback, right? So it's just having that continued, sustained, incremental, let's just call it not failures, right? Those habitual not failures will help you to eventually get to that point of sustained success. Or the other failure being, don't be afraid of testing out new things.
Mm-hmm.
Right, and to me that is kind of mine is from Warren Buffett, right? So not in the Twitch space, right? But one of the quotes that he's kind of most well known for is to be greedy when others are fearful, and to be fearful when others are greedy.
Yep.
And the point of that is that you don't ride emotions, and you don't necessarily follow the crowd, right? So that's applied specifically to investing. Whereas if everyone is kind of buying, then you should be more, critical of looking at why are they buying? Is it all just hype, or is there actually something there? And if others are all selling, then you should think, okay, so now you can kind of don't just follow the crowd, but you be critical and always analyze the situation to see why are they being fearful, and perhaps this is a time that you should actually be buying when everyone else is selling. So that's kind of a twofold thing. Learn to just analyze your situation outside of just, the hype, right? And this is the internet. There's going to be hype trains all over the place, and there's going to be pitchfork rallying all over the place. So just be cognizant that there's a lot of mob mentality on the internet, and don't be victim of mob mentality, and in that it'll drive you to do something that you shouldn't have done, right? So learn to analyze for yourself, and also take the emotion out of it. Look at your kind of...
As much as possible.
As much as possible.
You're still human.
Yeah. Try to take the emotion out of it, right?
Yeah.
What did Ernest say? Ernest said, here's one that was going through social media on Friday. Talk to people. Don't be shy. If you don't know something or are unsure of something, try to find good actors in the space to increase your knowledge. Maybe we should just get Ernest on here as for the relationship episode. Right? That goes exactly with what I was talking about as far as relationships goes. Find other people that are good actors, as you put it, are good people to emulate, right? Learn from their practices. That's even better than trying to develop your own practice. Just learn what's been successful for other people and try to emulate that.
Mm-hmm.
Don't be...
And now you're just going to watch me get, by the way, nuzzled and licked and things like that until my wife goes outside.
That's okay. My meatball was in here earlier, but I think I kind of locked him out after that break. And it was kind of... at the same time, being able to step out of those, it's very easy to get locked into your room as a content creator, right? Just because we're talking literally locked into your room, whereas you don't do anything, you don't go outside. Excuse me, and it kind of bothers me a little bit sometimes that people almost use that shut-in attitude as like a badge of honor, right? I don't have any issues with people being introverted. That this is different. We're talking about going out of the way to kind of disassociate with others. I think that's is severely detrimental to you as a business owner because one, and this is going to sound like one of those cheesy motivational posters that say like you're going to miss 100% of the shots you don't take, right? Well, as cheesy and stupid as that sounds, that is still true, right?
Yeah.
If you go outside, you never know what's going to happen. You never know who you're going to run into, what kind of opportunities might present themselves. And that's important there because when you can network with others, when you can ask others questions, when you can develop those relationships with others, that is a great way for you to, build your own, learn more about yourself first, build your own potential networks and your own connections, and also just helps you with balance and everything else. That's particularly why I'm looking forward to that relationship episode.
Yep.
Yeah.
And that's, we can talk about it in that episode more too, but just the law of numbers thing of, if one of every 1,000 people you meet is going to be, helpful to you in business, then it's great to have a whole bunch of people meeting other people who know what you're up to.
Try to meet 1,000 people as quickly as possible. Yeah.
Yeah. Hold on. All right, there we go. Sorry, Kat was way into why are you talking to people but not petting me.
That's okay. Yeah. All right.
Yeah. So I think I'm looking at the list that we have, and there's only one question that we didn't get to.
Okay.
so far, which was, what do you think is the worst habit for a business? And
I
if
think
there's other ones that we missed, let me know. But that was the only one that I've written down that we specifically didn't address yet.
yeah, I think that's a good place to. Um, okay, I think that's a good. I
And
think
on the
that's a
real
great
low
place
note.
to. Yeah. To kind of address that and to kind of not necessarily end on a low note, but just to kind of discuss. You know, it's a good thing to analyze both sides, right? And do you have one in mind? Do you have either your own bad habits or one that you've seen?
Yeah, I mean, I'd say the worst habit and one that's really hard to overcome and one that you have to consistently work to overcome is not stepping away from running the business to look at the business, right?
Mm-hmm.
Um, I think the worst, and this was sort of what Resorti asked earlier about, is there a step on the list of review the list for good hygiene habits? And really, I think it's too easy to get involved in the day-to-day running of the business so that you and then forget to analyze, are the things that you're doing working, analyze, are there different things that you might need to do coming up where something in the future is going to change it. But I think that's the biggest one, is just lack of sort of conscientiousness around the business itself. And of course, since we were talking about it earlier about you being the biggest asset of your business and you needing to be in good mental physical shape to run it consistently, I think when you don't step away, you also lose track of that piece of it. You lose track of the, am I doing all right with all of this?
Yeah, I would agree with that. And we're not trying to give cop-out answers here where it's just kind of a negative restatement of something that we said was good, right? So, like, yeah, we said analyze your business, where a bad habit would be don't analyze your business, right? So, I mean, the same thing, it's almost like what I mentioned earlier, looking at others as competition as instead of, building relationships with others. So, I think it's fair to say that the opposite of just about anything that we say is a good habit would be a bad habit, right? And
I mean, if we want to go for a straightforward one we haven't said yet, a real bad habit is not paying your taxes.
yeah, there you go. Right. So, not doing what you're supposed to do, what you're legally required to do. Right. So I think that's not, and I didn't mean to call you out like that. We're not giving cop out answers here. It's just usually if you look at the negative of anything that we're stressing, that is potentially a bad habit thing. And that's what I was going to say. One of mine was, and it would look like a negative. It's just kind of viewing others as competition rather than as potential cooperation, right? But if we're going for an actual, an actual habit that is not necessarily and the opposite of something that we said, for me, it's also waiting to start something, right? You almost saying like, oh, I'll start this on the new week. I'll start this on the new month. I'll start this on the new year, right? Or waiting for the perfect timing to start something. That rarely does that ever exist, the perfect time to do something, right? So what's that? There's an old adage saying that the best time to plant a tree was 10 years ago. The second best time to do it is today, right?
Yep.
So, and I think that's so rather than waiting to do something, just do it as soon as you can, right? So not just like as soon as you think the stars are aligned and everything's in perfect situation, right? So because that doesn't exist. So even if you don't necessarily even if you aren't necessarily ready to do it, like let's say you don't have everything set. For example, if we're talking about paying taxes, even if you don't have everything set and all your expenses booked in order, at least you can get started by contacting an attorney or contacting an accountant, contacting a tax preparation service, or buying TurboTax, or looking into a free tax preparation software, or downloading the 1040 form, right? So any of those things are things that you can at least start taking an initial step rather than just saying, I'm just going to wait until all my ducks in a row and then just do it. Because while ducks in a row is important as far as habits go, that's not going to help you when you're using it as an excuse.
Did my wife pay you to say that?
No. Although my wife probably would pay me to say that. Rather, no, she wouldn't pay me to do it. She just kind of like scold me to say it. Yeah. Yeah.
That's the whole discussion around having a kid thing. It's like,
Oh, I didn't even go to that route. Yeah.
did my wife pay you?
Yeah. Although that is
Just
advice
throw that in there.
That is advice that I've heard many, many times over for not just for babies, but also for many things. So, okay. Anything else you want to kind of discuss today? We are doing a shorter, it seems almost a seemingly shorter episode, but then we've gotten everything that we wanted to talk about.
That's because we're actually following an agenda this
time.
time.
We're not just rambling.
Yes.
We can discuss other things like Twitch related things or anything that you might like. But
no, let's talk about next week's episode and wrap it up and move forward. Unless people have questions, I'm glad to answer questions, but I also see no reason to keep something going longer than what we had organized.
It's true, right? So that's
because then I can play more Civ.
That's
not even true. That's not even true. My wife's. We're gonna go on a hike with some friends.
The just one more turn addict right there. Yeah, I know that feeling. Yeah, 5 a.m. Civ. Like where you didn't know it was going to be 5 a.m. You started playing at 5 p.m. and the next thing you know it's 5 a.m.
Yep.
But yes, and that is so in addition to better production, that's one thing we're going to be trying to do better, more meaningful, less rambling, well, as much as possible less rambling, and then just to be better and more concise and episodes, if you will. Yep. Okay. But yes, next week's episode will be, as we mentioned earlier, organization, discussing the specific business hygiene practice of organization. What does that mean? And we're not talking about just your physical space, but also being organized in your headspace, being organized in your daily routine and stuff like that. We're going to talk about things such as eating the frog, and if you'll have to be here next week for us to learn what eating the frog is.
It's important.
It's important. That'll be here Sunday on the StreamerSquare channel again at 3 p.m. Eastern, noon Pacific. And you'll get to see our lovely faces again. And who knows, you might have a surprise guest or something like that. Or at least surprise anecdotes. Whatever that means. Okay.
Surprise anecdotes.
Okay, yeah.
I'm looking forward to them.
Yeah. All right, let's wrap it up. Where can they find you, Galen?
Sure. So there are a couple places you can find me. First of all, we linked it before, but Twitter, it's at GalenHDEZ. There you go. And then the other place to find me is I do a weekly blog on my website, which is pajamapantsfinance.com. We have an article coming out tomorrow, actually, on things you can still do to help with your 2017 taxes, because you already missed the major deadline, which was the end of 2017. But there are still a couple things.
There's the secondary deadline, April 15th. Yeah. Yep. I can bet IRA contributions are on there.
Yes.
Health savings account. Can you? Yeah, you can.
It's a couple. You know what? Yeah. You gotta go read the article.
You're spoiling it. Yeah.
No.
Okay. Yes. All right. Please do go follow Galen at his blog. I can happily say that is a habit that I wish I could do, and it's a habit that he spent a lot of time building up. A weekly blog, a weekly article full of very good advice. You can find me at Twitter at Shanghai Law, and pretty much anywhere else at Shanghai Law, being Twitch and stuff like that. And I just generally I'll post different legal insights that I have as related to this space on my Twitter profile or Twitter feed rather, and soon to be utilizing a mailing list, which you can access and sign up for from my Twitter profile. Thanks again for joining us. Thank you, Galen, especially for being here. Thank you for Loco and StreamerSquare for providing this space. And please give us any feedback that you have, whether that's on Twitter, on Discord, or snail mail. I don't know. I have a PO box. If you really want it, you can send me snail mail right for feedback. But there it is. Thank you for joining us on this week of Business Hygiene and the kickoff of our Business Hygiene episode. Please join us next week, 2 p.m. Central, noon Pacific, on February the 18th, where we'll be discussing organization. Thanks. Take care.
See you then. Bye.